Imagine the modern world suddenly freezing in place. In an instant, something unimaginable happens across all continents. The giant billboards of Times Square go black, Tokyo's endless metro network drowns in shadow, and darkness swallows the Eiffel Tower in Paris. People stand still in disbelief. It feels as if time itself has paused. We live in an era where electricity is not a luxury, but the very oxygen of civilization. From the warmth of our homes to the signals that connect continents, from life-saving hospital machines to the glittering skylines of megacities, everything is pulsing with electric current. But what if that vital current vanished, not for an hour or a day, not because of a short blackout or even an EMP burst? What if it disappeared forever, from every wire, every battery, every corner of the planet? A breaking point begins with a mysterious global event that causes all electromagnetic phenomena harnessed by humankind to cease, instantly and irreversibly. The lights go out forever. The great darkness begins. For a moment, no one understands what has happened. Time seems to stop together with the flicker of the last bulb. Cities around the world sink into pitch-black silence, as if someone has draped the earth in a vast dark shroud. This is not a mere inconvenience, not like losing Wi-Fi or a dead smartphone. It is the collapse of the very foundation upon which our civilization stands. Power plants, nuclear, coal, hydro, solar, are dead. No lamp shines, no electric motor turns. At first, people assume it's just another outage, but the clock keeps ticking and the light never returns, not in a minute, not in an hour, not the next day. The main question is no longer whether we can survive without the internet or our phones. The true question is, how will humanity live without pumps that bring water, without ventilators that keep patients alive, without the transport and logistics that feed entire cities? This is not a story about comfort. It is a story about survival. It begins at the moment when the light dies and humanity faces its darkest challenge, our collective helplessness before the coming night. Act 1. Collapse and Chaos. The first days after the fall of electricity. 2025 to 2026. The first days after the fall of electricity. The first second of darkness. The first moments of the great darkness strike with physical force. Just seconds ago, the world hummed with engines and glowed with screens, and suddenly, a haunting silence and blackness. Across the planet, factory lines and personal devices freeze at once. A jet flying high above the clouds becomes a helpless glider, its engines dead. In every region, dozens of planes plummet from the skies, turning into fiery comets on impact. On multi-lane highways, modern vehicles with electronic systems stall one after another. A few old diesel trucks continue rolling in the dark, rumbling on inertia without headlights, but soon they too grind to a halt. Every electrical device, from kitchen microwaves to nuclear reactor control systems, dies instantly. At nuclear power plants, reactors shut down abruptly, but with no functioning cooling or control systems, the threat of overheating and radiation disasters looms over entire regions. On chemical and oil refineries, failed safety systems cause explosions and fires, filling the sky with poisonous black smoke. In megacities, sudden darkness reigns. Thousands of elevators stop mid-floor, trapping people in concrete cages. Subways freeze in tunnels. Passengers stumble out along the rails in total blackness. Without traffic lights, intersections dissolve into chaos and collisions. In hospitals, life support machines and monitors go silent. Doctors and nurses struggle to keep patients alive manually, but seconds matter. Within minutes of the power loss, hundreds of thousands of the most vulnerable perish. ICU patients, newborns in incubators, those dependent on life-sustaining devices. A medical catastrophe unfolds everywhere at once. Urban water supplies fail almost immediately. Electric punts fall silent and water ceases to flow to upper floors. Faucets run dry. Without power, treatment plants and pumping stations stop, soon crippling both water and sewage systems. In the dark, the last hospital generators sputter to life, but soon their fuel runs out. Impossible now to extract, refine, or transport. The world stands still, powerless and helpless. Riots and hunger. The first hours of blackout bring not only darkness, but an informational void. Communication vanishes, phones are dead, the internet silent, radios off air. People have no idea whether the disaster struck only their city, their nation, or the entire planet. Uncertainty breeds panic. By the second day, as electricity fails to return, chaos grips the cities. Shops, stripped of alarms and light, become easy targets for looters. Frightened crowds storm supermarkets, scavenging for food, water, batteries, anything that might ensure survival. Police and emergency services are paralyzed, communication systems down, patrol cars empty of fuel. In prisons, the failure of electronic locks and cameras sparks riots. Hundreds of dangerous inmates break free, adding to the turmoil. Law enforcement officers try to restore order the old way, on foot, with whistles and megaphones, but they are far too few to stem the collapse. Day 2, without light. The city has become a trap. No water since morning. Phones dead. I hear screams and gunshots in the distance. The neighbors plan to leave on foot at dawn. I don't know if I'll make it out alive. The economic shock follows swiftly. In a world where the screens of banking servers no longer glow, money loses its meaning almost instantly. Digital accounts vanish, ATMs are lifeless, cashless savings dissolve into digital oblivion. Physical cash is scarce and quickly worthless since printing presses are silent, and more importantly, no one believes in paper anymore. A kilogram of rice or a handful of batteries now holds more value than stacks of colorful bills. Barter returns as the only form of exchange in a darkened world. A similar picture has already appeared in history. In Weimar Germany in 1923, money lost its value so quickly that people used it as fuel for stoves. Farmers refused to bring food to the cities for worthless marks, and the urban centers fell into hunger riots and looting. Now this is happening on a global scale. Dollars, euros, yuan, all symbols of civilization's wealth, turn into useless scraps of paper. Hunger and despair drive people into the streets. City dwellers, law-abiding just yesterday, now break into warehouses and storerooms in a desperate search for food. In the darkness, humanity's worst instincts awaken. Without fear of punishment, for the police are powerless, groups of violent young men loot homes, taking the last supplies from the weak. Society begins to tear apart. People search for someone to blame. Some curse the government's inaction. Others accuse profiteers or neighbors of another race or faith, finding easy targets for their rage. Some governments attempt to declare a state of emergency. Military patrols with megaphones appear in the streets. Curfews are introduced. But without communication or functioning technology, even the army is powerless to maintain order on a national scale. Real power falls into the hands of whoever has weapons and followers, often local garrisons or gangs that have seized police armories. As in times of great crises, in the vacuum of authority, self-proclaimed saviors and radicals emerge. But for now, the crowd listens to no speeches. It is driven only by hunger and fear. The exodus from the cities. After several days, it becomes clear the city can no longer feed or protect its inhabitants. Food supplies in the megacities are depleted or looted, and no new shipments are coming. Freight trains lie dead on their rails. Trucks and tankers stand motionless. Cities, those once vibrant concrete jungles, turn into death traps. To remain without food or water is certain death. The great exodus begins. The first city folk have reached our village. They are hungry, exhausted. Many are sick. We shared some water and potatoes, but what will happen when thousands more come? Can we survive this flood together? From a farmer's diary. Millions of weary, starving people trudge along highways and rural roads. Entire families with backpacks and carts, like refugees of war, leave their former stone hives, hoping to find salvation in the countryside. They search for well water, food in fields, shelter in abandoned farms. Without transportation, this exodus becomes a biblical trial. Many never make it, collapsing from thirst or disease. Roadsides are strewn with abandoned belongings, empty vehicles, and the bodies of those who couldn't continue. Those who reach rural areas face another reality. The countryside is not endless. It cannot feed everyone. Farms and villages are themselves on the brink of survival, lacking fuel for machinery and salt for preservation, and harvests are limited. Locals greet newcomers with suspicion or even hostility. Too many mouths compete for too few supplies. In places, violence erupts between villagers and city refugees. Desperate gangs from the cities try to seize food by force, while farmers arm themselves with pitchforks and rifles to defend what's theirs. Yet in the countryside, the first heroes of survival also emerge. People who have preserved practical skills long forgotten in the digital age. Farmers who can work the land without modern machinery become invaluable. Mechanics and engineers capable of repairing an old tractor or converting a mill to run on water power are suddenly more vital than IT specialists or financiers. Those skilled in traditional crafts, blacksmiths, carpenters, herbal healers, or medics become the saviors of new communities. Meanwhile, those who once relied on narrow specialization and urban convenience find themselves helpless. The loss of electricity destroys not only comfort, it dismantles the very principle on which modern society was built, the complex division of labor and dependence on global supply chains. Most of the information and knowledge accumulated by humanity in the digital era disappears. Libraries, archives, servers all vanish with the electronic world. Everything stored in clouds or on hard drives is now as unreachable as the moon. A vast layer of culture and science is lost, from formulas and statistical data to literary masterpieces. Everything not printed on paper or engraved in metal is gone. This intellectual darkness may be even worse than the physical one. Humanity is left not only without the light of lamps, but without the light of knowledge it gathered over centuries. Act 2. Return to wood and coal. 1 to 10 years later, the 2030s, gradual reconstruction of society on mechanical foundations. The initial shock and chaos have passed. Across the world, consequences differ. Societies that once lived with minimal technology adapt more easily. Remote mountain villages or jungle tribes continue almost unchanged. Technologically advanced regions suffered the deepest collapse, but it is there that the first centers of recovery appear, for knowledge and tools still remain. Gradually, humanity everywhere learns a new old way of life. Those who survived begin rebuilding existence in a world without electricity. Within a few years after the fall, civilization begins to rise again, but on entirely different old-fashioned foundations. A kind of steampunk renaissance dawns. Humanity returns to the power of water, wind, and steam. The mechanical rebirth. Rivers once again turn the wheels of watermills, as in the Middle Ages, they grind flour and power sawmills and forges. On hills and rooftops, wooden windmills rise again. Their blades catch the wind, grinding grain or pumping water from wells. Where old steam engines survived or were rebuilt, furnaces burn wood and coal once more. Steam tractors plow the fields, and revived locomotives rumble, pulling rusted wagons along weed-covered rails. Formerly electrified railways are now converted for steam or even horse-drawn transport. The global logistics of the electronic age are gone, yet a slower mechanical network takes its place. Horse-drawn carts, river barges, and sail-driven ships become the arteries of a reborn world. Evenings in the towns, Kerosene lamps and candles burn once more. Electric light replaced by a dim flame. The night sky is now truly black, free of urban glow, and strewn with myriads of stars, just as it was 1,000 years ago. On the roads, traffic jams give way to the thunder of hooves and the creak of wagon wheels. Horses and oxen again become the main draft power on land. The Postal Service is reborn as mounted couriers, stagecoaches, and carrier pigeons. Seas and oceans are crossed by sailing ships. Motor vessels and tankers rust without fuel, so intercontinental travel revives the arts of celestial navigation and seamanship. Some even recall airships, lighter than airplanes and able to fly without complex electronics, powered only by a heat engine or ballast. Industry is revived too, but with a completely different face. Large automated factories have stopped forever. In their place, manufactories appear, workshops where labor is mostly manual or driven by primitive mechanisms. Tailoring, carpentry, and metalworking shops use belt drives and line shafts turned by windmills or water wheels. Metal production returns to coal-fired blast furnaces and even to forges, where every nail is hammered by hand. Cast iron and brittle steels are available, but aluminum or high-tech alloys are out of reach. Without electricity, they cannot be produced. Blacksmiths become central figures of progress. From repairing plows to crafting parts for steam engines, their work underpins the new mechanical civilization. Today we started our first watermill on the river. I heard the soothing creak of the wheel in the slap of water, and tears of joy came. Now we can grind grain faster. A small step, but a true holiday for our town. Letter from a Villager, Year 7, after the break. Restoring knowledge. After the first years of fighting for physical survival, humanity turns to intellectual survival, the preservation of knowledge. Books become the most precious treasure. Surviving universities, schools, and libraries transform into centers of a new enlightenment. In the age after the darkness, scholars and educated people resemble medieval monks who safeguarded the wisdom of antiquity. They collect printed books, textbooks, old encyclopedias, anything that can teach crafts and sciences without electricity. An era of scribes begins. With computers and copiers dead, knowledge can only be reproduced by old methods. Former research institutes and schools open scriptoria, where, by the light of lamps and candles, people hand copy the most important texts. Books on medicine, agronomy, mechanics, and chemistry are prized, anything that helps people survive and rebuild. Goose quills are used again. A typewriter, if a mechanical one can be found, or a homemade hand press, stands in from modern printers. Small presses powered by a foot pedal or a bicycle crank turn out leaflets, pamphlets, and even newspapers for local communities. Yet the restoration of knowledge faces serious problems. First, a shortage of materials. Paper quickly becomes scarce. Old stocks run out, and mass production is difficult without chemicals and energy. People gather old phone books and notebooks, pulping them for recycling. They write on the backs of old posters or in the margins of existing books. Ink also has to be made by hand, from soot, plants, or dwindling stores of printer's dye. Every page is worth its weight in gold, so writing is tiny and dense, using every scrap. The second problem is the gulf between theory and practice. Mostly books with foundational knowledge survive, while the most modern fields, computer science, quantum physics, and cosmology, exist only in the memories of a few specialists and in theoretical works that can no longer be tested experimentally. A new generation is born into a world without electronics, so many abstract concepts seem like unattainable magic. Even if a textbook on electrical engineering somehow survives, how do you explain a transistor when it can neither be seen under a microscope nor manufactured? Most high sciences come to resemble philosophical treatises, fascinating but detached from reality. Gradually, society focuses on applied knowledge, setting aside theoretical research that offers no immediate use. A new social hierarchy. 10 years after the break, the world is scarcely recognizable, not only technologically, but also socially. Power passes to those who control survival's basic resources. Former politicians, CEOs, or celebrities have lost their influence. In their place, the new elites are the owners of land, water sources, and mineral deposits. Whoever controls a coal seam or an iron ore deposit can set terms for an entire region because steam engines and workshops depend on them. Communities living by a powerful river possess an energy treasure in their water mills. Local autonomous enclaves form, essentially new mini-states. In some places, these are fortified city strongholds with strict discipline for defense and order. Elsewhere, they are self-sufficient rural communes under a charismatic leader or a council of elders. The common thread: ties between enclaves are weak, and each looks after itself first. Large nation-states fracture into shards connected only by name and memory. Where central governments still exist, their power is largely nominal. The real authority lies with warlords, headmen, or the New Age feudal lords. In many places, people seek solace in faith. The catastrophe feels like divine punishment or a sign from above. Alongside warlords arise religious leaders. Entire towns declare themselves godly communities, living by the laws of ancient holy books in hopes of earning salvation. Sometimes these theocracies are more humane than militant dictatorships, but they too set aside science in favor of belief. At the bottom of the new hierarchy are the masses with nothing but their hands. Physical labor becomes the chief currency. Those who can work the land, the workshop, or serve in the militia receive food and protection in return. An almost medieval principle returns. The peasant gives the lord his harvest and labor. The lord protects him from bandits and rival rulers. Personal freedom narrows to a minimum. People are bound to their community or patron, for alone they cannot survive. Harsh conditions breed harsh governance. Democracy and human rights, the luxuries of the electric age, seem out of reach in a world of perpetual crisis. To prevent chaos, new leaders impose authoritarian regimes. A dictatorship of order becomes the norm. Severe punishment for even minor food theft, exile or death for defiance. Many enclaves live under permanent martial law. Everyone has a role. Either you work for the common good or you are deemed a parasite and dealt with swiftly. Forced labor, even slavery, returns in new forms. Yet such severity has its rationale. It offers people at least the illusion of stability. After years of chaos, many accept a firm hand so long as the food riots and banditry do not return. The new feudal lords, whether a colonel proclaiming himself governor or a militia chief, promise order and bread in exchange for obedience. The exhausted populace agrees, entering an unspoken social contract: survival at the price of freedom. The global world, once bound by instant communication and trade, has shattered into isolated universes. Continents lose contact with one another. Oceans are hard to cross, and news from even neighboring countries arrives weeks or months late. Each region forges its fate alone. Act 3. The Age of Mechanical War, 10 to 50 years later. 2050 to 2070. New conflicts and the regime of Iron Order. The war for coal. Several decades have passed since the break. The brief calm of the early recovery years gives way to a new wave of conflicts. Humanity is once again at war, this time over what remains of the industrial foundation of the old world. Strategic resources, coal, iron, copper, and especially oil, are more valuable than ever. They are the bloodline of the new mechanical civilization, and every enclave wants them for itself. Wars of a new kind erupt, though with the same old motives. Picture armies armed with a mix of ancient weapons and the remnants of 20th century technology. Soldiers in greatcoats and helmets, armed with rifles and sabers, advance under the cover of steam tanks, clumsy armored machines cobbled together from old tractors and plated with steel sheets. Over the battlefield thunder cannons 100 years old. Towed howitzers and mortars roar again, for precision rockets no longer exist. Artillery salvos fly blindly, without radar or satellites. War once more becomes an unpredictable chaos. Field commanders coordinate with flags and signal fires. Communications have regressed to the age of Napoleon. Armies often lose their way or stumble upon the enemy by accident, for there is no air reconnaissance. We've been on the march for 3 months, mud underfoot, the enemy ahead. They say he's dug in across the river. They gave us 5 cartridges each, the rest will fire from muskets. If only we had an air scout, but no, we march blind like our great-great-grandfathers. Strange times, the future has become the past. From a soldier's letter from the front. Some remnants of past power endure. Small arms. Rifles and machine guns manufactured long ago still fire as long as ammunition exists. Bullets are hoarded, refilled, homemade gunpowder crafted to stretch supplies. When ammunition runs out, soldiers revert to black powder muskets and even bows, anything that can strike from a distance. Horses are again the backbone of cavalry and transport. Mounted charges unseen for over a century once more decide battles. On the seas, ironclads return, primitive steam-powered warships with deck guns bombarding coastal fortresses. Warfare takes on the look of the 19th century, only more brutal, for the stakes are higher, the last reserves of fuel and metal. Nuclear weapons, once the deterrent against global war, no longer matter. Missile silos lie flooded or looted, warheads rot, turning into radioactive scrap. Bombs that can no longer be dropped, no aircraft remain, become museum relics. The fear of mutual annihilation is gone, freeing the hands of aggressors. Where nations once hesitated to pull the trigger for fear of nuclear apocalypse, now great wars are possible again. A new arms race begins, at a lower technological level, but no less devastating. Societies throw all resources into forging swords and casting cannons. It soon becomes clear, whoever rebuilds industry first, even steam-powered, and seizes more resources will dominate the rest. Entire cities and regions fall under the control of those who hold the mines and foundries. Coal is the new oil, and blood flows for it as once for black gold. The new medicine. Brutal wars are only one reason for the horrific population decline. Humanity's greatest enemy in this new world is disease, returning from the past. Without electricity, modern factories producing vaccines, antibiotics, and sterile equipment have stopped. Large-scale sanitation is almost impossible. Cities have no centralized clean water, and sewage systems often fail. Epidemics sweep across the world one after another. Cholera, typhus, dysentery, once defeated by progress, now decimate entire villages and neighborhoods. A bit of dirt in a well can doom an entire settlement. Refugee camps and military garrisons suffer most, where filth is unavoidable. Long-forgotten diseases return. Outbreaks of bubonic plague in isolated regions, new flu strains with no vaccines. Mortality rises to 19th century levels. The strong survive, the weak perish. Medicine has fallen back centuries. The few remaining doctors work with traditional methods, herbs, tinctures, surgery without modern equipment. Antibiotics are a luxury. Small amounts of penicillin are brewed in makeshift labs from mold cultures, but it is scarce and impure. Antivirals are non-existent. Old practices return, surgery without anesthesia, only ether or alcohol, bloodletting, leeches, quarantines, and isolation of infected villages. In an improvised hospital, a doctor operates on a wounded soldier by kerosene lamp, without x-rays, without cauterization. He prays gangrene won't set in, for there are no strong antibiotics. Often the only anesthesia is a swig of alcohol and a leather belt between the teeth. Infant mortality soars. Without incubators or vaccines, not all newborns survive. Women bear 5 to 7 children, hoping half will reach adulthood. Life expectancy drops. 50 or 60 is a blessing. Cities that once held millions now house only tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. The rest died of hunger, war, or disease, or scattered to the countryside. A demographic collapse. Humanity shrinks by 70 to 90% from its electric age numbers. Those who remember the early 20th century are veterans of a lost civilization, telling the young of a time when 8 billion lived on Earth and humans reached space. It sounds like a myth. The dictatorship of order. In an age of constant war, famine, and plague, a new kind of ruler rises, brutal but efficient dictators who promise order instead of chaos. Just as in 1930s Germany, when the exhausted people turned to Hitler for work and bread, so now communities rally behind charismatic leaders who offer simple solutions. The weary population willingly trades freedom for stability, just to have food and live without fear. These new rulers, be they warlords or people's kings, build regimes eerily reminiscent of totalitarian states of the past. All resources go toward maintaining the army and the industries needed for war. The people have no real choice. Society becomes one vast military camp. You either work or you fight. Armies swallow nearly all able-bodied youth. The rest labor in fields or factories to feed the front. The entire economy is mobilized. Luxuries vanish. Production serves only survival in war. In the capital of one new empire, the ruler calls a night rally. Thousands gather on the square, torches blazing, listening to his speech. He promises to restore greatness, find the enemies behind every misfortune, and punish them. The crowd chants oaths of loyalty, and in the darkness of this total mobilization, repeat the scenes humanity once saw in the 20th century. Iron order rules. We work from dawn to dusk. Everyone is afraid to speak. Walls have ears. Yesterday my neighbor disappeared. They say he complained about the government. I never saw him again. But at least the children aren't hungry. From a secret diary under the new regime. Slave labor quietly returns, though called by different names. Like the Third Reich once built forced labor camps, new regimes exploit prisoners, criminals, and undesirables for the hardest tasks. This ensures full employment. No one is jobless because everyone is either mobilized or conscripted to work. Armies swallow almost all able-bodied youth. The world has finally fractured into several militarized authoritarian blocs. Feudal kingdoms in all but name. Between them stretch uneasy truces and endless local wars. All are on roughly equal technological footing. None can achieve dominance. Wars drag on for years, draining scarce resources. Yet the rulers persist, for their power depends on war and fear. And step by step, humanity edges once again toward the abyss. This time without nuclear bombs, but with the same fanaticism and cruelty that once plunged it into darkness. Act 4. The Reckoning for Cynicism. 100 to 300 years later. 2120 to 2320, a distant post-industrial world without electricity. Over these long years, the planet itself has changed. In places, nature has reclaimed space. City skyscrapers have collapsed and grown over with green. Wild deer graze on former autobahns. Yet as people struggled to survive, they also wiped out many resources. Whole forests were felled for fuel. Delicate animal species disappeared. The balance between humanity and the environment is as precarious as everything else. The world of a different human, Homo mechanicus, the mechanical human, who has never known a world of electricity. To them, tales of former wonders, the internet, global communications, flights into space, sound like legends or ancient myths. The cultural gap between generations is colossal. Great-grandparents remember smartphones and computers, but great-grandchildren cannot even imagine what those things are. Concepts like atom or galaxy are empty words for the new generation, since they have never seen any proof of their existence beyond yellowed books. A typical scene: a young man asks his grandfather about an old electronic watch found in the ruins. The grandfather explains that people once had such things that glowed without fire and kept time by themselves, but the young man only shrugs. It's beyond his comprehension. Education becomes purely practical. School subjects of the past, computer science, English, astronomy, disappear as unnecessary. In their place, children are taught from an early age to plow the land, care for livestock, and work with tools. Engineering knowledge is reduced to mechanics and the construction of the simplest machines. Only a few receive broader schooling, the ones who will become the new scribes, doctors, or military engineers. Even their learning is highly pragmatic: mathematics for ballistics and architecture, chemistry for gunpowder and medicine, history to avoid past mistakes, or so their mentors hope. Culture and art transform as well. Art becomes grounded, functional. The architecture of the New World is sturdy walls and plain buildings without ornament, designed to withstand storms and sieges. Painting and literature praise nature, the fertility of the soil, heroes of labor or war, everything on which the community's survival depends. Abstract art, subtle irony, futuristic dreaming all fade into the past, for the new human sees no meaning in ideas that cannot be eaten, plowed, or applied on the battlefield. Where authors once wrote science fiction about galactic empires, they now craft simple tales of sowing and harvests or songs of hard peasant toil. I am old and remember electric light. The young do not believe my memories. To them, a lamp that burns without fire is a fairy tale. They live a simple life and do not dream of more. Sometimes it seems to me that with our generation the last glimmer of the old civilization will go out. From the memoirs of an elder of the break era. Debt and bankruptcy. The New World has achieved a certain stability. Enclaves trade goods, steam trains run between large fortress cities, sailing ships bring scarce items from afar. It seems humanity has recovered. Rebuilt factories produce simple clothing and tools. Fields yield harvests that are skillfully preserved without refrigeration. From time to time there are even fairs and festivals. Life goes on. Yet behind this visible progress lies an invisible debt, an inner weakness of civilization that will one day make itself felt. The mechanical civilization has hit the ceiling of its capabilities. It has exhausted the easy resources and cannot advance without qualitatively new technologies. Forests have been cut for charcoal. Coal mines accessible with primitive means are nearly depleted. To obtain more fuel or metal would require modern equipment, which does not exist. Without electricity, there can be no leap to mass production of high-quality steel or, say, the synthesis of new materials. Scientific progress has almost stopped. The great discoveries were made centuries ago, and new ones require delicate instruments and experiments that are unavailable. Medicine is also held back by a ceiling. Epidemics cannot be defeated without vaccines and genetics, both of which are unattainable without electronic equipment. Society is dancing on a volcano without realizing it. People have grown used to believing that the steam engine suffices for all needs, but they forget its cost. Every train and factory devours tons of coal. Every harvest depends more on weather than on technology. Natural resources are consumed faster than they can recover. The new states have accumulated an internal debt in their attempt to maintain their level of development. This debt, in the form of exhausted deposits, felled forests, and unfinished projects, will sooner or later lead to a crisis. Our scholars say it cannot go on like this. Coal reserves are dwindling, metal grows brittle from constant remelting, soils are exhausted, we have reached the limit, but our rulers order more factories and airships as if resources were endless. Trouble is surely coming soon. Report of an engineers' guild. Once Nazi Germany faced a similar situation. Its economic miracle rested on militarization and borrowed resources, and when the bill came due, collapse followed. Likewise, the New World, built on total mobilization and exploitation, cannot grow for long. Without external territories to conquer and plunder, empires begin to suffocate on their own problems. Sooner or later, the steam engine of progress chokes unless a fundamentally different source of energy can be found. A new path or a new darkness? Does this mean humanity is doomed to remain forever trapped in the mechanical age, or even slip further backward? Not necessarily. Across these centuries, knowledge has survived, in books, in memories, in legends. Somewhere, in forgotten archives, volumes of physics and electrical engineering gather dust. Perhaps there will be brave souls who attempt to revive what was lost. And one day, in someone's workshop, a lamp might flicker again, powered by a handmade generator. When that happens, society will again stand at a crossroads. In a dim barn, a group of young mechanics have spent years assembling a mysterious device from old copper wires and magnets, and now the wheel turns and a tiny bulb glows in their hands. Their hearts stop for a moment. It is the first electric light in many generations. They rejoice, yet hesitate. Will this light bring hope or disaster? On one hand, the return of electricity could reignite progress. People might once again have light in their homes, machines in the fields, and communication between cities, everything that was once normal. On the other, it could reopen Pandora's box. From now on, whoever controls electricity will hold immense power over others. A new race will begin, this time for possession of Prometheus's fire in a reborn world. History may repeat itself, nations competing to rearm with modern technology, leading inevitably to new wars over resources. Philosophers of the New World ponder, should humanity even return to the path of electricity? Would it not make us dependent and vulnerable once again? The Great Darkness has shown that a civilization too complex can collapse in a single moment. Perhaps humanity should remain where it is, at the level of slow but stable steam progress. These debates may decide the fate of generations to come. Before them lies a choice: to try once more to ignite the electric flame, or to consciously renounce it, fearing a repeat of catastrophe. In essence, humanity is living through new dark ages, perhaps darker than the medieval ones that followed Rome's fall, for now we have lost even more knowledge and means. A world without electricity is a journey backward through time. In a few centuries, we have rolled 200 years back in technology and in some places 2,000 years back in social order. Once again, there are empires and vassals. Once again, superstition and the rule of force prevail. Subtlety disappears from life. Irony, refinement, dreams of the distant future. Instead return the primal questions: where to find food, how to fend off the enemy, who will work the fields. The moral of this cynical scenario is bitter. The harshest survive and dominate. Just like the Nazi economic miracle built on aggression, in the Great Darkness, those who act most ruthlessly and cynically prevail. There are no quick, easy solutions that justify dictatorship or violence. Every miracle built upon them inevitably turns to tragedy. True prosperity, like the one we once knew before the break, cannot exist without freedom, creativity, and humanity. The bitter irony of this story lies in the fact that humanity still possessed the knowledge to save itself, but had lost the tools to use it. We relied so completely on the artificial light of technology that when it went out, we sunk into a darkness both physical and moral. Dreams of space, of uncovering the secrets of the universe, all are postponed indefinitely. First, we must once again learn how to light the lamps in our homes. This alternative history is both a warning and a lesson for us, the people of the Electric Age. We have seen how easily civilization can descend into darkness and barbarism if the spark of progress dies. Let us guard that spark, remembering that its true strength lies in the freedom and cooperation it enables. Electricity was never just current in wires, it was the collective memory, conscience, and hope of civilization. And when it went out, we understood, in the dark there is always room for the worst possible scenario. And this was ours.